I turned to see if anybody was chasing me. Nobody was. But nobody was crying either. People of Reddit, when did your gut feeling save your life?
Almost 8 months pregnant. Normal, complication-free pregnancy. Walking through the grocery store, I had a twinge of a headache. Told my husband we needed to go home. At home, I took a shower and relaxed a bit, but got an urgent impending doom feeling. Still just a tiny headache, not even enough for a Tylenol. Packed my toddler's diaper bag and requested we go to urgent care. The whole ride there I felt fine, wondering what I was even going to tell them at check-in. But that "you're not okay" feeling was still looming. We pulled in, I carried my sleeping 2-year-old inside and basically said, "I'm pregnant and something isn't right." My blood pressure was 256/148. I had a seizure 7 minutes after getting in the room. If I had told my husband to drive past and go to the ER, we would have been stuck in traffic, as a truck had rolled over. If I hadn't left the grocery store or my house when I did, there's a chance I wouldn't have made it. We got a ride to the hospital when I was stable. I was induced at 35-ish weeks, and my son was born perfectly fine, albeit small. I stayed on blood pressure meds for 8 days before it went back to normal.
My sister, since she was about 5, was always obsessed with tsunamis and would always ask my dad every night before she went to sleep if there would be a tsunami that night. We lived on a beach. About 5 years later, when our family was holidaying in Samoa, an earthquake struck at about 6 a.m. It was only a dull low rumble but went on for over a minute. Everyone at the resort woke up and went outside for a few minutes, then went back to bed. My sister, having been obsessed with tsunamis, ran down to look at the water and noticed the sea going out and saved a lot of lives, including my own. There was about a minute from her noticing till the tsunami hit. Luckily for us, there was a cliff right behind the resort. If not, a lot more people would have been killed. So something like a gut feeling 5 years in the making. Creds to my dad for this one. Back in 2011, my dad and I was driving down the country for New Year's Eve. Suddenly he goes quiet, kind of starts breathing slow and steady, and tells me to look up the road. He was so calm and focused. I look up and see a car spinning in the middle of the freeway, ramping up speed and knocking cars off the road. This is Scandinavia, winter, pretty much on ice. I imagine the driver of that car hoping, just hoping. So my dad proceeds to accelerate towards the guy spinning, which didn't even occur to me was weird. He was just so calm, which made me calm. The car hits us on my dad's side. Half a second earlier my dad turned slightly right, which was just enough for the car to push us out of the road and completely safe into a snow hill. I realized a bit later that a lamppost on that same side we flew off to had crushed the back right side of our car, just missing the angle that would have hit me. Years later I realized the reason my dad sped up the vehicle. Getting hit by that car was a question of when, not if, and if he had not accelerated, that lamppost would have been my death. After that occurrence my pulse always drops in pressure situations. Was sitting on one of those metal cylindrical electricity boxes outside my house when there was a blackout. Electricity was slightly flickering in my house, no other houses had a blackout. I looked down at what I was sitting on and I was like, maybe this is the source of the problem. I stood up and stepped away from it, and like 2 seconds later it literally blew up. Like a pillar of flame shot out and above it for almost a full minute. It was basically a gigantic Bunsen burner, and I was a few seconds short of physically getting fried.
When I was in college, I lived in a sketchy part of Chicago, Humboldt Park/Logan Square, before gentrification. I liked to take late-night strolls, even when I was living in that neighborhood as a 20-year-old woman. Yeah, I know. Pretty dumb of me. One night, I was feeling stressed out, so I embarked on one of my late-night strolls. I was walking along a somewhat busy road. Cars were zooming past me. Pretty normal. I wasn't paying much attention because I was too wrapped up in whatever was stressing me out that night. Suddenly, a chill shot up my spine. Hypervigilance washed over me, and I became more alert than I had ever been. Something was wrong. Someone was watching me. I quickly spotted a car. It was driving in the opposite direction, a little slower than usual. It was too dark for me to see anyone inside the car, and the car was pretty unassuming. But I still knew something was off. They were watching me. I just knew. The car drove past me and then made a U-turn. Now it was right behind me, creeping along the curb. Luckily, there was a Walgreens a few blocks ahead. I started walking faster, and the car eventually sped past me and disappeared into a corner. I somehow knew I wasn't safe yet, so I still sprinted to Walgreens. I told the security guard what happened, and we both went outside. The car was parked up the street, about 50 to 100 feet away. The security guard was a big guy who looked intimidating. He marched toward the car, and the car immediately backed up, made a U-turn, and then booked it out of there. The security guard called the cops, and they drove me home. I never took a late-night stroll again. My gut made me more alert, but it was really the security guard who saved my life. I'm positive that if he wasn't there that night, something bad would have happened to me. I wish I could find that security guard to thank him.
Guys, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you leave a like, subscribe and share this video with your friends. Not only is it free, but it would also help us make more videos like this. And make sure to leave a comment with what stories you would like to see. We will take yours into consideration. This was a few years back. I came out of a club in my hometown after a heavy night of drinking. I was a student then, and out with a lot of university friends that I lost during the night. I was alone. I was going to get a taxi home, but thought I could do with some McDonald's first. We have a big 24 hours one in our town. During my drunken walk towards the McDonald's, I heard crying coming from one of the dark narrow alleyways we have in our town. I followed the noise down the alleyway until I came across a woman with her face towards the wall. She had a hood covering her face and had no distinguishing features. At first glance I thought that maybe she had been raped or mugged. Like, why else would there be a woman crying in an alleyway? Anyway. As I got closer to her in that poorly lit alleyway, I saw two giant industrial bins between her and myself. It wasn't until I got within a few feet of the bins that I stopped. It was like a giant shock went through my body. I don't know how to adequately explain it other than a primal instinct. Within 2 seconds of seeing them bins, that are large enough for people to hide behind, the dark lighting of the alleyway, and the faceless woman crying, I was 50% sure I was prey. I felt an urge to run away. It was like something inhuman in me was telling me to turn and run my legs out of that dark place. When I got to the light at the end of the alleyway, I turned to see if anybody was chasing me. Nobody was. But nobody was crying either. I was working as a bank teller, and our bank had large windows on 2 sides of the building so you could watch everyone walk from their car into the bank. A guy started walking in and I instantly knew something was up. He wasn't doing anything abnormal, I just got a weird feeling. I was the only one in the front. Everyone else was either at lunch or in the vault, so I couldn't leave my station. I prepared myself to get robbed, so I took a few deep breaths and tried to remember everything about him to tell the cops about it later. Sure enough, he walked up and opened his wallet to show me a note that said something like, "I have a gun. Do not say a word. Give me all the money you have." That gut feeling allowed me enough time to calm down and formulate my thoughts so I could get him out of there as soon as possible, while also remembering as much about his appearance, voice, mannerisms, etc. as I could. Edit, he was caught after his girlfriend turned him in. My bank was the last he robbed in Denver. On my very first day as a full-fledged police officer, I was called to assist on a single car accident. It had been raining that day and a car had crashed and turned sideways on a highway off-ramp, forcing the first officer to shut it down. He was afraid that cars were coming by too fast, and he asked me to shut down the closest lane. I parked my car in a lane on what was a perfectly straight stretch of highway. Eventually, fire and EMS arrived to tend to the people who had been in the car, and a tow truck arrived to clear the wreck. There were 5 vehicles with flashing lights on this straight stretch of highway at night. I was also wearing a full-length high-visibility raincoat with reflectors on it. I felt pretty comfortable standing near the center lane, and so I wasn't paying attention to oncoming traffic, but I suddenly got the feeling that I should stand closer to my unit. As soon as I moved, a car barely avoided striking my police car, veered to where I had been standing, crossed over 2 lanes, struck a car, veered in the opposite direction, struck another car, spun out, and then came to a stop after striking a guardrail. I ran down the highway to assist the driver, who had totaled her car and had broken both her legs. She said that she couldn't tell which lane was being blocked off. I'm almost 100% sure that she had been texting and driving. I grew up in a small farming community. Back then, when you were the only kid on the bus who lived down a stretch of road, the bus driver dumped you off on the corner of the street and you usually walked the half-mile or so to your house. I was in detention once, so I had to ride the elementary bus home after, and no young kids lived on my road, so I was dropped off. As I got off the bus, and it started driving away, another guy pulled up to turn right. He just stared at me with dead eyes and my adrenaline simply spiked. We had just plowed the field I was in, so it was fairly rough terrain, but I knew in my heart of hearts that he was coming back. So I sprinted. As I was about halfway through the field, running parallel to the road, I know now I should have run deep, I turned and saw him charging back up towards the road I was just dropped off on. He was moving. Long story short, I hit a cornfield as he slammed on his brakes and got out of his car. By that time I was gone. I heard him get back into his car and drive away, but I didn't move from that field for a good 2 hours. I eventually trudged my way home. This is not my story and it wasn't my life, but it's kind of related and interesting, so I'll throw it out there. When my sister was just a few months old, my mom set her in her bassinet one night before going to bed. She was lying in bed trying to sleep, but couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. I remember my mom's description of the event was kind of haunting in a way. She walked into the totally silent living room where my sister's bed was. It was December and we had a Christmas tree set up, and in the glow of the tree my mom looked in and saw my sister not breathing. If I remember correctly, she was basically choking on phlegm, turning blue. Fortunately my mom is a lifeguard instructor, so she did back blows to clear my sister's airways a bit and got her to the hospital. I don't know what it was that my sister had exactly, but she was horribly congested and had a fever, and it set on very quickly. The doctors got her fixed up, and she's alive and well to this day, but it's horrible to think what might have happened if not for my mom's instincts that night. We have reached the end of the video. If you liked it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell and share it with your friends. What was your favorite story so far? Tell us in the comments. If you have a story as crazy as these ones, don't hesitate to share it. Have a fantastic day.